First tonight, we're here in Oxford with a story which sounds like it could be from an episode of Inspector Morse. An aristocratic French family conned out of their fortune and brought to this city to work virtually as slaves. But this extraordinary story isn't a work of fiction, as Jeremy Sturm reports.
Thierry Tilly was a man so controlling he was dubbed the Leonardo da Vinci of mental manipulation. Over 10 years, he brainwashed 3 generations of a noble French family, conning them out of millions of pounds.
I compare it to a spider. He'll sting you to anaesthetize you. Once he's stung you, he'll wrap you up. Afterwards, he sucks the blood out of you.
He took all the family's money, then persuaded them to move to Oxford to work for him, punishing them if they resisted.
It was completely unreal. We were hallucinating. We were locked in the house and only the children had the right to go out to work.
We were completely manipulated. Our mind was gone. He told us that we could be killed.
The story begins in Montfranquin, a 13th century village in the southwest of France. One of the most impressive properties around is Chateau Martel. For hundreds of years, it was owned by the same family, the Vedrines.
The Vedrines enjoyed the aristocratic lifestyle. They'd all get together here at weekends for big parties. But about 10 years ago, the family changed, became more reclusive. They'd spend days, sometimes weeks inside, too scared to go out.
That's because Thierry Tilly was calling the shots. He infiltrated the family, convincing them he was a well-connected, powerful man who wanted to help them. The lawyer who eventually brought Tilly to court says he used complicated brainwashing techniques to gain control of the family.
At the castle, there were no timepieces. They were obliged sometimes to spend 3 days in the dark to lose their sense of time. And he'd isolate members of the family. They weren't allowed to talk to each other. And with his hypnotic powers, he managed to partition people off, set them against each other.
So how did Tilly gain so much influence? I've come to this apartment block in Bordeaux to meet the husband and wife at the heart of this story. The flat belongs to a friend because Christine and Charles-Henri de Vedrines say they're too embarrassed to show us the social housing where they now live. They told me at first Tilly seemed to have the family's interests at heart.
Tilly said he would look after our home and investments and trusts. We just wanted to protect them. We used professionals, but he made us believe he was better than them.
He knew a lot of things about us, and my family was convinced by him.
Tilly pulled the family members in, one by one, including Christine and Charles-Henri's son.
He came to me and it was very nice. I thought like everything I was telling had an importance. It became everything actually, at the point that one time I told him that I hoped that it could be in my mind to help me when I had to make decisions, and he told me, please do not say that out loud because people won't understand. I understand what you're saying, but you can't say that out loud.
He knew how to adapt himself by empathy to each of the individuals. He spoke differently to the 16-year-old girl and the 20-year-old boy than he did to the grandmother. He spoke to people in their own language and used it to trap them.
Tilly's control was now so powerful, he convinced the family they were under threat. He said people wanted them dead. They must escape and sell their chateau.
He said you must absolutely sell it. You can't keep it, it's too dangerous for the family. He sold everything in Haute-Garonne, knowing it was our roots and would hurt us. And he succeeded.
The de Vedrines own properties all around southwest France. Tilly got control of all of it. This is one of 7 properties that he sold. In total, he conned the family out of €5 million. It's money they haven't seen since.
As the French authorities grew suspicious of Tilly, he took radical action by moving to Oxford. He persuaded the family to follow him. At the time, they lived in rented houses, including this one, working as gardeners, cooks and cleaners. Their wages were handed over.
Tilly came up with a bizarre arrangement where he controlled the family's money, who they could see, even what food they could eat. If he wasn't with them, he'd be constantly badgering them on the phone, asking them who they were with. They were accountable 24 hours a day.
All my money, I gave it to him. And I didn't have no fantasies, you know, I couldn't even buy a Mars bar, because that money would be like pretty much a theft from the family and the whole thing. And so I didn't go to the cinema, we couldn't have friends, I couldn't have a girlfriend. So we were really into our own world.
Tilly's hold was so strong the family, when not at work, were virtually under house arrest. As for Christine, she and sometimes her husband were punished by Tilly, who believed they were concealing money from him.
I stayed several months in my bedroom. I could not take my meals with the rest of the family. I stayed there several months.
For a fortnight, we didn't sleep. We only had biscuits and bread to eat and tea to drink. It was really hard. When we came out of there, Christine was in an appalling state, with swelling on her lower legs. She had to learn to walk again. She was so badly affected.
In Oxford, I lost my spirit. It was the first time I thought of suicide. Yeah, I must admit I thought of that in Oxford. Yeah.
As Christine struggled with her own state of mind, she tried to stay strong for the rest of the family. She was the rebellious one who questioned Tilly and his motives. And while all this was happening around her, she was working at this deli in Oxford.
When her boss eventually met Tilly, he saw him for what he was.
Immediately I sensed this chap wasn't right. Drip dry shirt, nylon tie, cheap suit, cheap shoes. Straight off, I thought, well, this is not a big financier, this is a spiv.
Already suspicious of Tilly, Christine would become the first family member to break free.
She said to me, "What did you think of Mr. Tilly?" And I said, "Well, I think he's either a nut or a crook." And she looked at me, and it was like a sort of click in her brain. You know, I could just see it. She went, you know, she did a double take. And then she started telling me her story. I couldn't believe what I was listening to. So I said, "Look, we've got to get you out of here. These people are dangerous. I actually fear for your life." I said, "Is there anybody we can phone?" She said, "Well, yes, it's my cousin."
They phoned the cousin and arranged for her to come and take Christine back to France. But all of this was kept secret from her husband. He was still under Tilly's spell.
I said to Christine, "Have you got your passport?" Christine said, "Yes, I've hidden my passport, I've got it." So I said, "Well, look, when you go home tonight with your husband, you must make absolutely no movements that can make them suspect that something's happened." So next morning, my driver was waiting, I primed him. She arrived, she went to her, the husband walked off, ran into the car, straight up to London. And when she got to London, the cousin and her best friend were waiting for her, smuggled off back to Paris. And she rang me in the afternoon and said, "That's it, I'm safe."
For Thierry Tilly, it was the beginning of the end. Christine went to the authorities, and in 2009 he was arrested, and he went on trial in Bordeaux last year. France finally learned how for 10 years Tilly had this noble family at his mercy.
Tilly was convicted of a number of offences, including abusing people weakened by psychological subjection. In other words, brainwashing. Prosecutors called him a liar and a fantasist. The judge spoke of mental trickery before jailing him for 8 years.
With Tilly finally shut away, the Vedrines are now hoping to rebuild their lives.
J'en veux beaucoup à Tilly, notamment.
I'm angry with Tilly because of what he did to my wife and children. He stole 10 years of our lives, but he did more than that. He destroyed everything on the way.
Now, actually, we are completely ruined. We have no house, no money, no furniture, nothing. I feel very guilty for my children because I did not protect them.
For 10 years, I lived in a perceived reality, and actually it was a lie. And he took something from me that I can't have a grasp of it, and it's difficult to live with that.
I'm speaking out now because the main thing to understand is that even if we haven't been very intelligent, it could happen to others.
Ça peut arriver à d'autres. Voilà.